Hey, and welcome back. We're going to talk a bit about arrays in JavaScript. Now, an array is like a variable, much like a variable, but there's a major difference. So if we use our bucket metaphor, this bucket, the array bucket, can store multiple different items, unlike a plain variable, which can only store a single value at a time. So just to give you a bit of an example here, I started a page here, arrays.html. It's very plain. I don't have any CSS or anything. I'm just going to use some internal JavaScript here. And you're welcome to hook in the external JavaScript file if you want and work within that. It would do the same thing, but I'm just going to do this just to keep it on one screen here. And so, yeah, here in the script tag, I'm just going to do a bit of JavaScript, and I'm going to show you the difference between a plain variable and an array. So, for example, if I use var and then my variable, and then let's store a string of text here, sand, shovel, water. Now, although there are three words in here, sand, shovel, and water, JavaScript doesn't know that there is anything other than just a single value because it's within a string. To JavaScript, this is one single value. You could have a million letters, words, a paragraph. You could have, numbers within the string. You could have a whole novel separated by comma. And JavaScript is only going to see this as a single value because it's a variable and not an array. And that's the difference between an array and a variable. So an array would treat this the same content in here differently. So you'd do it something like this. So you'd say var and then my array. So it starts off as a variable. And then this is where the variable comes into play. Square brackets. And inside the square brackets, you add your values. And it could be numerical and it could be strings. So for example, sand, comma, shovel, comma, water. Now, JavaScript knows that there are multiple values because this is an array. And you can retrieve a specific item in that array by displaying the variable name with the index or the number of the item you're looking for. And keep in mind, the first index is always 0. And if you don't know what I'm talking about by index, index simply means the number that is associated with the item in the array. And it starts at 0. So this item would be the index of 0. This would be the index of 1. This would be the index of 2, and so on, so on and so forth. You can have a million of these or more. You can have an infinite number of items in here, and they would all have an automatic index assigned to the item. And so all you really need to do to spit out that a specific item, unlike the variable, which you can only spit out the variable itself, which would just always say sand, shovel, and water, this you could spit out sand, shovel, or water individually or all together. So for example, I'm going to say document.write, just to keep it simple. And I'm going to grab my array, you see there, and in square brackets, because we're using square brackets, the index. So let's say 0. So let's see what that does. There we go, sand. This displays sand. Why don't we just put a little level 1 heading here just so we know that this is the arrays page. There we go. Sand. So great, we grabbed sand. What if we wanted to grab shovel? Well, you change the index to 1. Shovel. And if we wanted to grab water, this would be index of 2. There it is. Sand, shovel, water. So now JavaScript knows, hey, these are all different items. And that's really cool. And there's a lot more that you could do with arrays. This is one of the most powerful things that you could do in programming languages. So it could be a course in and of itself, which is an idea for me, in fact. But you could do more with arrays. And I'm going to show you here another kind of basic example, or maybe an intermediate example, is you can loop through all of the items in a single function. And we'll talk about functions in an upcoming lecture. But what if we wanted to spit out all of the items in one go rather than manually typing out 0, 1, and 2? What if we wanted to just spit out all the content of the array, no matter how long it is? Because what if there are 1,000 items and you wanted to spit them all out? Are you going to write this out 1,000 times? So on and so forth? No, you're not going to do that. That's why it's a programming language. You could build something that does the work for you, and it's very simple. So check this out. You'd start off a new variable, var, let's say fave foods, And in an array here, so we got the square brackets. Let's go pulled pork. Let's go pizza. Mexican mango. I've been really into those lately. They're in season, and we're finally getting them up here in Canada, so they're super good. They're like my favorite. And pineapple. Always love pineapple, but it's got to be from Hawaii because it's very different. If you have a pineapple that's imported, now, if I was in Costa Rica and I was eating a Costa Rican pineapple, that'd probably be amazing. But when you import a Costa Rican pineapple to Canada, it's picked too early, and it's not very good. Probably the same with Hawaiian pineapples, but when you eat a Hawaiian pineapple, you know the difference. Super good. Okay, here we go. We got a variable with an array of favorite foods in here. Now, what if we want to spit all these out at once? Well, you use the for loop. For loop looks like this. Never mind the semicolon. So just this. This is your for loop, the beginning syntax right there. So in your braces, you want to start a new variable. And you can call it whatever you want. But a common convention in for loops is to use the variable I, as in index. So var I index equals 0. So this means, or index or iterate, that's another term. So I equals 0. So now the variable I has the value of 0. And the reason why you want to do that is because now you want to test in here. You want to say I is less than, so this is the less than symbol, and then you grab the favorite foods variable, fav foods dot length. That's going to get us the length, meaning how many items are in there. So that JavaScript just counted how many items are in that array. It could be 1,000,000, and we'll know automatically. It'd take no time at all. So now it says the variable I is the value of 0. So if I is less than the length of favorite foods, then, so we're going to close that statement, I plus plus. That means increment the value of I by 1. Plus plus means plus 1 until it reaches the end of the number in the array here. So let's go through this again. So var I equals 0. So I equals 0. The number in this variable is just 0. But now this is checking, this statement is checking if I is less than the length of this array. So the length of this array is 0, 1, 2, 3, or the length would actually be 1, 2, 3, 4, because the index is a little bit different. So how many items are in here? 1, 2, 3, 4. So as long as I is less than 4, keep incrementing this the value of I. So now I, after the first loop, would be 1, then 2, then 3, until it reaches the end of the array. Now in here, you need to have your curly braces, and this is when you do something. So what do you want to do each time it loops through another item in the array? Document.write fav foods, and instead of in the square braces putting the index, hard coding the index, we just have to put the value, we just have to put the variable I. So now what this does, again, so var I equals 0. So if I is less than the length of the array, iterate, increment the value by 1, and then spit this out. So now I at first equals 0, then it equals 1, then it equals 2, then it equals 3, and then we're at the end of the array. So then the for loop then dies. It's done, and it won't keep going. So why don't we check that out and test it, see if it works. There we go. So let me just comment this one out so it doesn't show up in the values here. Pulled pork, pizza, Mexican mango, pineapple. And so you could see here that it's just spitting it all out in one line. There's no breaks, line breaks or anything. So it is working. But what if we wanted to display a little bit nicer? Well, very simple. We could do something like this. Let's, in this for loop, in this function, each time you loop through another item in the array, add a break tag. So let's go document.write, then an HTML break tag. Let's see what that does. Pulled pork, pizza, Mexican mango, pineapple. There you go. and it added a break tag after every single one of these, so they're on new lines. So that's how that's how you loop through an array. Now there's another thing you could do here in with your arrays. It's called multi-dimensional arrays. So in JavaScript and other programming languages, you can store multiple layers of information within an array. So this means you can actually have arrays within arrays. So instead of something like as simple as this, so we're going up new levels here. So it's the variable is just, here's one value, just the one value. In an array, you have multiple values. But then what if you want each of these values to have values themselves? So what do I mean by that? I mean, each of these items can have information associated with each one. And you could store that in an array, which is just stored within a single variable. Talk about efficiency, right? So let me show you how that works, just so it's not confusing. Let's talk about multi-dimensional arrays here. So I'm going to add a new variable, call it var my friends equals, and square brackets again. And you can have it all in one line, or you could split it out so it's better for readability. And I'm going to do that just so you guys can read this a little bit easier. So there we go. The tabbing isn't necessary. I just do that for readability's sake. Okay, so in here, we have John. So far, this is a little different. We have square brackets within square brackets. This is because this is an item in the array. This one thing is an item, so let me show you. This is a single item. We remove that semicolon. There we go. So that is a single item from here to here. That is one item. But there is an item within the item. And so now if I put that back, here we go. If I put that back, in here, I could say John, comma, male. And I could keep going because I could say, 31 as his age. There we go. So there we have an array with another array within it. Now, if I were to leave it at this, then this is unnecessary. I went an extra layer for no reason. I could have just took these brackets out and then that would be perfect. But I don't want to do that. I want to add more items. So here we go. We'll add Sandy, who is female and 18, comma. So I'm separating these by comma because this whole line is the same as just this. That's an item in the array, but I want extra information associated with that index. And so I add a square brackets and then I separate the information by comma. And let's add one more. Let's say Marcus. He is male and he is 74. There we go. And we don't need to put a comma on the last one. So there we go. We have var my friends, and then we have a multi-dimensional array right here. Really, it's just a two-dimensional array because we only have two levels, but you could keep going and going and going. But just to keep it simple, here we have one or two-dimensional array. So now how do we get the information? Well, you would just use, in this case, let's use document.write. And now the difference between this and the other array is that you need to go one extra layer deep. So each of these arrays have an index, like I said before. And each of the arrays within the arrays have an index. So this has the index of 0. But what if you want to grab male from this index? Well, you need to find out the index of this value, which would be 0, 1. So then therefore, we're looking for something like this. We're looking for the first item, which is the index of 0, and then the second item in that specific array, which is the index of 1. Now let's see what happens. We should get male, and it's undefined, and I know exactly why. That's because if you caught that, then good for you. This needs to start off with the variable my friends, because it doesn't know what index are we looking for. What variable are we looking for these indexes or indices? Indices? I don't know how you say that when you pluralize it. Okay, I'm just going to add a break here. I'm going to say document.write, just so we have some space between this and the last one. There we go. So we got male. Perfect. Now, what if we wanted to grab something else, like, I don't know, Sandy? Well, we need to go to the index of 1 and 0. There's Sandy. What if we wanted to grab Sandy's age? Well, index of 1 and 2, 18. What if we wanted to grab Marcus's gender? Well, this is the index of 2 because it's 0, 1, 2, and his gender would be 1. There we go. And that's how you use, that's how you spit out the information in a multidimensional array. Now, for even further explanation on arrays, I suggest that you check out my free Practical PHP course provided as a resource in this lecture, because it has an extensive section on all of the different types of arrays and how to harness the power of each of them. And they're incredibly powerful. Now, even though PHP is a different programming language than JavaScript, remember how I told you earlier that by learning JavaScript, you automatically know parts of other programming languages? Well, that's the case here, because arrays are very similar in PHP and JavaScript. And the concepts of the arrays are nearly identical. So you simply just have to account for some differences in syntax. Now, this is kind of a nice little introduction to arrays. There's a lot more. I'll provide you some resources for further learning and practice. And as we go through this section of the course, we'll be utilizing arrays for sure, so you can see them in application.